I personally haven't had any problems. I think we're quite lucky in London. 'Cause parkour's quite big, so we're quite aware of people training. It kind of helps to be a female in a way, I suppose, because it can seem less threatening, which is a bit harsh. But no, I've never had any problems with police or authority in London personally. I suppose it's a varied view, like everything. Most people are probably intrigued. Like with anything that you don't know much about, you're always intrigued. How does it work? How are people able to do this, that, and the other? So mostly when I talk to people about parkour, or friends of friends, or something like that, they're usually just quite intrigued and want to know more about moving like that and things that you do to maintain your body, basically. I'm not sure, because I rarely do that. It really matters on the individual, or maybe it probably matters on the environment. So if there's not much potential to move, maybe in estates, in playground areas, maybe they're mostly surrounded by rooftops, then maybe that might alter the way that they move and the adventures and journeys that they take, let's say. I think it can be predicated upon that society's environment, that parkour society's environment, basically. But I don't know in exact figures, sorry, I'm not sure. I mean, I've never had any big injury from parkour. I think as any athlete, anyone doing any sport, a huge part of your sport and your training is to maintain your body. Anyone who's taking any sport seriously, the intensity that you're training to, whether it's parkour, whether it's soccer, whether it's power, like weightlifting, whether it's gymnastics, any sport, you have to work really hard to maintain your body because of the intensity that you work at. So it's constantly making sure that you fit in time for recovery, whether that's foam rolling, stretching, eating well, hydrating, getting a massage. So I rarely get what I would call an injury. It's more about maintaining my niggles and maintaining my body. So that's a constant thing, because it's constant work to obviously work on recovery and make sure that my body stays the way that I want it to be, basically. I hit my shin, but that's a general, that can happen doing anything. In general, I separated my shoulder, but I wasn't doing parkour, it was in a gymnasium messing about. I think most injuries, if I generalize, happen when it's something very small and you're not focused. Because when you're doing things that maybe have an element of risk, you're usually completely focused, very calm and confident in the moment and confident in your ability. Whereas when you're messing about or doing some small stuff, sometimes you can lose that focus, and that's when the injury is actually most likely to happen. So the worst thing I did was separate my shoulder, but that wasn't parkour related, it was in a gymnasium messing about. So, but otherwise, I've opened my shin before, but not very deep. I think this is something that can happen in anything, that most sports that you do. So, I mean, it's growing so quickly. It's amazing. I've been training for 4 years. When I first started, it's much bigger than when I first started, both the community and the female community. There are a lot more females training, there are a lot more people training. There are a lot more people training on their own and in groups. It's growing. I think it's still growing, and I think it's growing in a positive way. I think it's amazing, and just everyone's being able to express themselves the way that they want to. It's really hard to dictate and make sure a movement moves in one particular way. But I think there's lots of positivity in parkour. There's lots of positive action going on. So I think it's moving in a great way, and it's growing very quickly. It's great. So it's really good. For us, we live in London, so it's not so bad. It rains a lot, but that's part of training. So in wintertime, we train the same. I actually prefer the cold because I get hot quite quickly. But So I train the same. I probably condition a little bit more. I do condition a lot anyway. I probably move a little bit more technically in the summertime, but in the winter, same training, still going outside, still working on technical movement, still breaking jumps, still conditioning, still going to classes, still coaching. It's same routine basically. Just maybe you wear more clothes or bring some extra hats or something like that. That's the only difference. Yeah, extra socks. I'm one of the core team members. So myself and Fizz teach the women's class once a week, which is an outdoor class. So we coach, the women's class. And I'm basically part of the coaching team, the core team. So I get to sometimes explore and travel different countries and coach at the events and meet new people and share some experiences with people. I do most of the work behind the Parkour Generations women Facebook page, Twitter, and I was doing we had Parkour Generations women's WOD out a little while ago, so I was taking care of that. So it's mostly the kind of social networking of Parkour Generations women, kind of. But we all share responsibility, all 6 of us, whoever's in the country, kind of. So we share that, whoever's mostly around, and it's a joint network. So my role is just I'm coaching, that's it. So I'm a coach for Parkour Generations. Well, I mean, it's not me who charges, but companies in general. I mean, most sports that you do charges a fee, right? And if Parkour Generations wasn't charging, then school classes wouldn't be able to happen, and 25 academy classes a week wouldn't be able to happen, because it would be near impossible to have people working 9-to-5 jobs, but then being able to leave the office to teach during the day or maybe during the night when they're supposed to be working. So, and I don't see anything wrong with. I mean, coaching is something that's very hard to do. It's very mentally draining, and it's an amazing thing to do as well. You know, like I was talking to you about before, you have to be very focused and very switched on the whole time. So it's not something. I think it's great if you do it for free, but when you have a business such as Parkour Generations and you're running as many academy classes, and that's not including schoolwork, there has to be a fee, because the company needs to grow, and it's a company. You know, it's not a charity basically, but which is still a company. So. We charge a fee because we need to pay people, basically. The people need to get paid, otherwise we can't run the way that we do. And I think also people are happy to pay. If they wasn't, they wouldn't pay. Sometimes when things are for free, sometimes they're not taken so seriously. But when you know people are there out of their time and it's their job and they're qualified, then you're most likely to take it more seriously. I'll start with the positive. I mean, it's great because there are some countries where in the winter and fall maybe it becomes difficult to train outside, and I understand that it's different in London. It's just raining. Rain's completely different to several foot of snow, and it creates a space for people to openly and it's like allowed by the law. It's not breaking any laws. To a place for them to train, and I mean, with this parkour park, you can move things around a lot, so it's constantly changing. But on the flip side, it's structured, you know, so it's created, and a big part of parkour is exploring your environment and not being able to move it, not being able to dictate where you're going to put this foot because of that. It's just you have to adapt to the environment. So that's the only thing that it could maybe is slightly different. I'm not going to go and say, okay, I dislike this and I dislike that, but I do prefer training in the natural environment, as in London terrain for me. Although I'm really excited to have lots of fun there, but I love the fact that you can just find a new spot, and then there's so much potential for movement there, and then you find a different spot, and there's so much potential for different types of movement there, so it's endless. And maybe also because obviously the environment shapes the way we move to an extent. So if you're only training in one particular environment, maybe you only become good at that particular movement. It's a possibility anyway. Whereas if you have many different environments to train in, you have many different movements to come up with, different ways to explore, different ways to move. So that could be a disadvantage, I suppose. I think a disadvantage to having a parkour park is that you can move the environment around. So maybe you can start doing a particular jump, it's close to your maximum, and you can begin to pull it back and push it back and push it back. You keep doing the jump because you've gained confidence, and it's only getting pushed back a small amount until you're doing your maximum jump, the biggest jump you've ever done. But that's completely different to breaking a jump outside, where you have to look at the size of the jump. First hand, you have to break it, so a huge mental barrier. So you can gain a lot of confidence indoors in a parkour park, which is a good and a bad thing. So negative for the reason that maybe it's not realistic, but then great for gaining confidence as long as you can carry that over to the real world, like outside, basically. I mean, I started in the academy, so I started indoors. I stayed indoors for a while, and now I haven't been indoors for maybe a year and a half. So I only really train outside. So when I was indoors, I'd see a lot of people come and they love parkour. They want to stay around for a long time. They had so much fun, etc. But they didn't stay. In the end, they disappeared for whichever reason. I'm not sure. So we had a lot of people come and we had a lot of people leave. And it's the same with outdoors. If I leave for a couple months, like say I'm training on my own for a couple months and then I come to one of the classes, there's 80% of people I usually don't know. Yeah, so it's growing, but which is a great thing, which does mean that a lot of people are training on their own and in groups, which is ultimately what I suppose a company hopes for, and I'm quite sure that's what Parkour Generation hopes for, is that people within the classes for a certain amount of time, then they gain enough confidence to train on their own, because it's not realistic, and you don't want basically people staying in classes the whole time, because you want them to have the independence and confidence to train on their own. And that's parkour, isn't it? It's the real challenge of knowing your limits, so you don't need anyone to tell you how to train or what to do, because you know how to move and you know what you're scared of and how far you can push. So it's just changed a lot because it's growing a lot, basically, and the female community is growing very quickly. It's amazing. Maybe I think there was about a 6-month block where I didn't see any women stay, and now we're having lots of women come and staying and really excited, so super motivated, getting stronger, getting more confident, becoming more technically apt, and it's growing in a great way anyway, I feel, for those reasons. It's really hard because it's hard to generalise, but I'm going to have to generalise. Most films and media projects and things like that are going to want the stuff that looks fascinating, looks like big and looks wonderful to watch and it's eye-catching, and that's understandable because it needs to sell. So obviously it's taking parkour in its largest context, let's say. So sometimes it's most of the stuff that can be out there is big jumps and to do with rooftops. So that is a stereotype about parkour. Oh, you jump roofs. Oh, you can jump a roof gap. I say, well, how big's the roof gap? So it's really relative, so I think it's just the way that it goes. That's the way that the media will portray parkour, and it's inevitable. So as long as, hopefully, as long as the media projects that people are taking on are still within what I would like to think is the ethos of parkour, so no cigarette campaigns and like drinking campaigns, then that's the way it goes. That's life. And if people want to make money, as long as they're happy to make money with their body, and because it's hard work doing media stuff, you have to a lot of repetition and some big stuff. So as long as people are happy to do that for money, then I think it's up to them, basically. I don't have a big opinion on it. It's up to them. Yeah, everyone for their stuff in that respect anyway. So, yeah. My cousin asked me if I wanted to do free running, which I was like, "What's that? I've never heard of that." Because I hadn't heard of parkour, I hadn't heard of free running. And though for me it's the same thing, it's just a word. But I hadn't heard of any of that. I hadn't seen any of that. So she asked me to come along. And she said, "Look, I've got this bruise." I was like, "I don't want that bruise." Why are you trying to entice me to go to a class with a bruise? But I went, and I had an amazing time. And everyone was so encouraging. So really what drew me to parkour was the parkour community and how encouraging they were and how sweet they were. And I was very aware of the way that I was moving because hadn't done any sport for about 6 years. I couldn't do a push-up. I couldn't even find my way over an obstacle. I was using my knees. I was very weak at that point. So I was very aware of the way I was moving, but I realised that no one else cared about how I was moving, just to encourage me to move more, and I loved that. So I kept going a couple of times a week, and then they just never got rid of me. It's been 4 years. I've never had a break. You know, some people say, "Oh, I had a break for 6 months." I've been really busy in my life, but I've never had a break from parkour, just constantly training some shape or form, basically. So I got into it for fun, and then it became a part of my life. Like most people. It's the same story, just different set of words, yeah. So I don't have one goal. I always have 2 or 3 goals, maybe per 6 months or per year. So at the moment, it's to keep increasing my arm strength. I've been working on my arms for a while after I separated my shoulder. I'm working a lot on rails at the moment, and then muscle ups. So muscle ups and rails is what I'm working on at the moment. So my goals are arm orientated actually for this year. I'm not going to say them because I don't want to jinx them, but my 2 goals are arm orientated for this year. So I never have one particular goal. Each goal just, once I've done that, it's like, what's next? So it's never, okay, I get this goal and then I don't need to make any more. It's always, what do I next want to work on? So there's never ever going to be one goal in parkour. I'm never going to be satisfied. So but I think that's a good thing. It keeps me hungry. So it's a training methodology for my mind and body, where I move physically. I run, jump, I move underneath things, I roll underneath things, I dive through things, I lift things, I throw things. Parkour is anything to do with movement. It's any obstacle that I can get through and get past physically, basically. But it's more in my everyday vision as opposed to moving physically. So if I haven't trained that day, it doesn't matter because I'm constantly thinking about parkour. So it's just something that's with me psychologically and mentally every day. I think about it all the time. So that's what parkour is for me. It's something that's with me every day. So personally, I don't look at any difference between them. I think they're both moving. One of my friends once said, if there's a video and he does parkour for he or she does parkour for 3 minutes and then does one flip at the end or in the middle, does that make it free running? You know, so for me it's just the same thing. It's just moving. It's just moving. That's it. So no, I don't make any distinction between them. Although I did start with Parkour Generations, so I do call it parkour, which is a valid point. But you call it parkour, it's because that's who I started with, Parkour Generations, so I call it parkour. I think they could be great for, they're very dynamic, so I think they can be great for working explosive movements. They could, and also it's another way of moving. So, I mean, I personally don't take time to train flips at the moment. I'm not motivated by it right now. I might be next month, who knows, and I'll wait and see when I get there, and if I'm motivated then I'll train it, but right now I'm not motivated. I'm just focusing on other things. But I think, yeah, if you enjoy it, do it, as long as it's benefiting you in your training. That's the thing. If it benefits in your training and you're doing it well executed and you're landing safely, yeah, by all means do it. I suppose most people would say indoors with lots of soft things isn't parkour. It's not realistic, and outdoors is parkour. But For me, parkour is nearly everything. I think it's a very personal thing. Parkour is a very personal thing. It has to be. You have to know why you're moving. You can't, it's important to understand why you move in general. So for me, parkour is nearly everything. So there is no limits really to what parkour is for me. I'm not a big advocate. I'm not that excited about competitions. I don't think it's personally so great for the parkour community. But at the same time, I know some people are just meeting up and having fun with their friends and then getting paid for it. And I mean, who am I to say something? But it can give an image very similar to the media gives that image. But instead it's us deciding to give that image as opposed to being approached to an extent. I'm not a big fan of competition in parkour in general, because I really believe it's hard not to have adrenaline basically when you're up on stage and you're like battling, let's say, against your friends, whether it's for fun or not. It's really hard not to have adrenaline. But on a personal note, for me, parkour is about, like I was talking about before, is being calm and confident in your ability in that moment and being completely focused as opposed to being fueled with adrenaline. And that's the only thing I don't really like about competition, is it seems to be a lot about adrenaline, but that's generalizing again. So I like the whole calm and confident in your ability thing, and not about anyone else, not about what anyone else is doing or who can do something better. It's just about what you can do and your ability. So it's a lifestyle for me, but it's lifestyle / discipline. I don't see it as a sport, actually. I think about it. It's a way of life for me because it's the way I view things. It's the way I view most of my decisions. It has a huge influence in how I deal with my decisions. It has a huge influence how I feel in my life. My life and my training are interrelated. If I'm not feeling so good in my everyday life, let's say, for whatever reason, generally I won't be feeling so good in my training and vice versa. So they affect each other. So it is just a way of life and viewing things for me. But it's a discipline because it has taught me discipline, which carries over into my everyday life. So that kind of thing, discipline, lifestyle, yeah. But sport, no, it's just, training is just part of life. I don't see training as a chore or a sport. It's training. Yeah. Everyone should train. But yeah, so it's a discipline and lifestyle for me. 100%, definitely. I sprint a couple times a week. I lift, I do a lot of pulling, do muscle ups, I do ring work, I do L-sits and handstand work. So, then what is parkour? This is the thing, is for me, I have the same mindset of when I'm lifting or when I'm breaking a jump. I'm still scared. So it's a mindset of let's do this and just push through it. So when I'm lifting, conditioning, whatever you want to call it, and when I'm breaking a jump, actually what parkour is basically, what you could say parkour, like breaking a jump, parkour, lifting, conditioning, it's the same mindset for me. So yeah, I train outside of that and it helped me a lot. So I think sprinting is a great tool anyway to build power. There you go. So everyone should sprint, even if you don't do parkour, because I think as adults we don't sprint enough. We just forget how to run as fast as we can. I think it's an important tool and it feels great too. So yeah, I like to sprint. It's important to obviously think about where it will go, but at the same time it's really important to focus on what you're doing and make sure you believe in what you're doing, what cause you're doing or whichever. So right now I'm kind of just focusing on the direction I'm going in and the people that I'm surrounded by, and hopefully that's a big enough piece of energy that will take it in a good direction, and we can spread that more when we meet more people. And majority of the people that I've met through parkour, through coaching at events or participating in events, all share the same energy one way or another. I think obviously everyone does parkour for different reasons and there's different methodologies, but there's still that same passion and spirit and love for the movement. So I believe it will go in a good direction. Maybe that's naive, but mostly I'm focusing on what me and the people around me are doing right now. I think, yeah, like I think parkour is going in a great direction, and I'm really excited for what's going to happen, of course, because it's growing so quick, and even as a practitioner of 4 years, people are doing stuff I never even knew was humanly possible, and I practice and I see things all the time, but they're really pushing the boundaries, and it's amazing to watch. So I'm really curious to see where it's going to be. So I'm curious to see where it's going to be, and I'm seeing I met a young boy in Glasgow. He's from Coatbridge, where it says his name. He's 11 years old. Amazing. And it's not that he's good for a kid. He moves amazingly, and it's so inspirational. So with boys like him and lots of people pushing the boundaries and doing things I didn't even know was possible, I'm just very excited and curious to see where it will go. And that's it, really. And the women's community, woo! Yeah, which is growing. It's amazing, seriously. I mean, even getting to coach at events, like that's only happened for women, let's say, in the last 2 years. Yeah, it's awesome, and I really enjoy coaching both guys and girls. I don't think that women coaches should just be coaching women. I think they should coach both. Like girls have a lot to learn from guys, and guys have a lot to learn from girls. It's the same thing. So the community is growing really quickly. The women's coaching community is developing very quickly. So for me, it's all going in a good way.